Surah Al-Baqarah, an early Medina surah, Surat number 2. As the opening surah, Al-Fatiha, sums up in 7 beautiful verses the essence of Quran, so this surah sums up in 286 verses the whole teaching of the Quran. It is a closely reasoned argument. Here is a summary. It begins verse 1 to 29 by classifying men into 3 broad categories, depending on how they receive Allah's message. This leads to the story of the creation of man, the high destiny intended for him, his fall, and the hope held out to him. Verses 30 to 39. Israel's story is then told according to their own records and traditions, what privileges they received and how they abused them. Verses 40 to 86, thus illustrating again as by a parable the general story of man. In particular, reference is made to Moses and Jesus and their struggles with an unruly people, how the people of the book played false with their own lights and in their pride rejected Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who came in the true line of prophets. Verses 87 to 121. They falsely laid claim to the virtues of Father Abraham. He was indeed a righteous Imam, but he was the progenitor of Ismail's line, Arabs, as well as of Israel's line, and he, with Ismail's, built the Kaaba, the house of Allah, in Mecca, and purified it, thus establishing a common religion of which Islam is the universal component. Verses 122 to 141. The Kaaba was now to be the center of universal worship and the symbol of Islamic unity. Verses 142 to verses 167. The Islamic Ummah, meaning brotherhood, having thus been established with its definite center and symbol, ordinances are laid down for the social life of the community. Verses 177, that righteousness doesn't consist in formalities, but in faith, kindness, prayer, charity, probity, and patience under suffering. The ordinances related to food and drink, bequest, fast, jihad, wine and gambling, treatment of orphan and women, etc. Verses 168 to verses 242. Lest the subject of jihad should be misunderstood, it is taken up again in the story of Saul, Goliath, and David, in contrast to the story of Jesus, verses 243 to 253. And so the lesson is enforced that true virtue lies in practical deeds of manliness, kindness, and good faith. Verses 254 to 283. And Allah's nature, meaning Allah's attributes, is called to mind the sublime Ayat al-Kursi, the first of the throne, verse 255. The surah ends with exhortation to faith, obedience, a sense of personal responsibility, and prayer. Verses 284 to 286. This is the longest surah of the Quran, and in it occurs the longest verse, verse 282. The name of the surah is from the parable of the fair, which illustrates the insufficiency of keeping obedience. When faith is lost, people put off obedience with various excuses. Even when at last they obey in the letter, they fail in the spirit, which means that they get fossilized and their self-sufficiency prevents them from seeing spiritually they are not alive but dead. For life is movement, activity, striving, fighting against baser things, and this is a burden of the surah.